You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the globe to bring you the latest developments in medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. It's time for the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville. Now, here's your host, Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Friday, September 15th, 2017, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us here. We made it through yet another week, and here we are in the middle of September, just cruising on out the rest of 2017. And we're going to bring you all the latest news and information as we get into the 2018 election season. We got marijuana legalization likely to be happening in the state of Michigan. They're collecting signatures up there. Missouri is working on a medical marijuana petition. Utah is working on a medical marijuana petition. We've got some news about that coming up in the Cannabis Headline News. Oklahoma is already on the ballot for 2018 for their medical marijuana. So lots of stuff happening at the initiative level. And then don't forget, we've got state legislatures that are looking into legalization or medical marijuana just through a vote of their legislatures, not through an initiative process. In fact, the state of New Jersey is likely to be one that will legalize through its legislature. They've got a gubernatorial candidate, Phil Murphy, who's the Democrat, who's favored to win, and he's very pro-legalization. We'll have to see what legalization looks like in the Garden State, or I should probably call it the no garden state, since they don't allow home cultivation of medical cannabis, and it's looking like their legislature's leaning away from allowing recreational home cannabis cultivation as well. So the no garden state might have some form of legalization. We just don't know what it'll be. But we've got some news on that as well coming up in the Cannabis Headline News, a new poll that bodes well for legalization in New Jersey. Also coming up on the show today, it's Friday, so we visit with our friend Herb Thrasher from 420radio.org's Herb Thrasher Flower Hour, the best live 2-hour stoner rock program on the net. He's going to fill us in on the latest stoner rock albums and stoner rock festivals and concerts that you need to check out. So a little bit of culture here on today's Marijuana Agenda. And then to round out the show, we'll have time for a radical rant where I'm reading the tea leaves a little bit. I've got some comments from the Department of Justice, some actions by the Drug Czar's office that lead me to believe winter is coming, if I may steal a phrase from Game of Thrones. There might be a crackdown coming if the Trump administration can stay out of scandal long enough to execute it. Let's get to the news.
This is your Cannabis Headline News. Brought to you by MarijuanaMoment.net, the complete source for all your marijuana news in one morning newsletter from Marijuana Majority Founder Tom Angel. Subscribe today for free at MarijuanaMoment.net.
This is your Cannabis Headline News for Friday, September 15th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville. Marijuana use is sharply rising in the United States, but the trend is not the result of the growing number of state laws that allow legal use of recreational or medical marijuana, writes Tom Angel in Forbes. That's the conclusion of a study in the journal Addiction that was published online this week. Researchers at the Public Health Institute's Alcohol Research Group analyzed data from the periodic national alcohol surveys and stacked its results on marijuana use against changes in state laws. They found that instead of being caused by policy changes, the rise in cannabis use was, quote, primarily explained by period effects, end quote, meaning societal factors that affect populations across age and generational groups. The authors identify a decreasing disapproval of marijuana use as one such factor potentially at play, but they are clear that the rise in use was not caused by changes to marijuana laws. In a surprising move reported in Leafly, U.S. Senator Orrin Hatch, a conservative Utah Republican and longtime cannabis prohibitionist, on Wednesday introduced a bill to encourage more research into the effectiveness of medical cannabis. In a speech on the Senate floor, Hatch passionately defended medical marijuana while reiterating he remains, quote, strongly against the recreational use of marijuana, but warned that, quote, we would be remiss if we threw out the baby with the bathwater, end quote. Reporter Matt Laszlo asked Hatch, quote, what made you come around on medical marijuana? Hatch responded, quote, I've always been in favor of it, and, quote, if it's written right, I'll support it, end quote. Hatch's speech suggests the experience of a friend kicking opiates in favor of medical marijuana may have informed his decision. Quote, in Utah and across the nation, opioid abuse continues to ravage hardworking families, Hatch said. After deliberative thought, he said, I've determined that medical cannabis is an alternative worth pursuing, end quote. Although 29 states and the District of Columbia allow marijuana use for medical purposes, few medical students are being trained on how to recommend the herb. Researchers at Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis surveyed medical school deans, residents, and fellows and examined a curriculum database maintained by the Association of American Medical Colleges, or AAMC, learning that medical marijuana is not being addressed in medical education. Their findings are available online in the journal Drug and Alcohol Dependence. 2/3 of medical school curriculum deans reported that their graduates were not prepared to recommend medical marijuana. A quarter of deans said their trainees weren't even equipped to answer questions about medical marijuana. Nearly 90% of residents and fellows surveyed felt they weren't prepared to recommend medical marijuana, and 85% said they had not received any education about medical marijuana. Using data from the AAMC database, the researchers found that only 9% of medical schools had reported teaching their students about medical marijuana. A new poll from Quinnipiac University is out, and it shows that residents of New Jersey are ready to legalize marijuana, just as the term of pot-hating Governor Chris Christie, who swore marijuana, quote, would not be legalized on my watch, end quote, comes to an end. Garden State voters support 59 to 38%, allowing adults to legally possess small amounts of marijuana for personal use. Every listed group supports legalized marijuana, except Republicans, who are opposed 53 to 43%, and voters over 65 who are divided, with 47% in favor and 50% opposed. But 55% of voters said they would, quote, definitely not try marijuana, end quote, if it were legal. 9% say they would definitely try it, and 12% say they would probably try it. Marijuana is more dangerous than alcohol, 12% of voters say, while 38% say it is less dangerous, and 46% say marijuana and alcohol are equally as dangerous. KREM-TV in Spokane reports that one of the subjects believed to have shot and kidnapped an employee of a Washington marijuana shop was taken into custody in Goldendale Thursday afternoon. Goldendale police said Donovan Culps was taken into custody following a short pursuit that ended in a collision. Culps was one of two people suspected of shooting at and kidnapping Cameron Smith, an employee at Lucid Marijuana Shop in Cheney, on Sunday while he was sitting in his car in the parking lot. Reports show one of the suspects then got into Smith's car and took off with him inside. Smith was not located when Culps was taken into custody. This has been your Cannabis Headline News for Friday, September 15th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb.com. City of Portland permit number 17-159855.
You're not high. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
We need to say, as Nancy Reagan said, just say no. Don't do it. There's no excuse for this.
Okay, maybe you're a little high.
If you work in the cannabis industry, consume marijuana, or just support freedom, you need to know about breaking policy news that affects you. Marijuana Moment is the daily newsletter that helps you stay on top of all the latest and most important state, federal, and international cannabis developments. Brought to you by longtime legalization activist Tom Angel, Marijuana Moment puts a concise yet comprehensive overview of cannabis news in your inbox early every weekday morning. Wake up to Marijuana Moment and rest assured you'll be ready for the cannabis news that's driving the day. Subscribe now at marijuanamoment.net.
As we prepare for the weekend, we remember that the fight to end adult marijuana prohibition is as much about culture as it is about criminal justice. Music has always been at the forefront of revolution, and the marijuana movement is no different. Join us as we visit with Herb Thrasher, program manager at 420radio.org, for this edition of Reefer Rock Review.
Hello everyone, I'm Herb Thrasher. Welcome to your weekly Reefer Rock Report, held every Friday right here on the marijuanaagenda.com. All right, getting into this weekend's festivals, we're excited that the Boston Freedom Rally is kicking off in gear September 15th through the 17th, starting today. So many bands, so many speakers. Starting today, we have Roots of Creation, The House on Cliff, the Rupert Selection. We've also got See This World. Yeah, what up, Dave Tree, Darius Hayward, DJ Kid Hype, and a lot more. Moving on to Saturday, we've got headlining Marlon Asher, Mighty Mystic, Mendo Dope, Joe Sambo, and a lot more on Saturday as well. Speakers mixed in. And then on Sunday, closing out, bands like Baby Bash, Paul Wall, the Electrovaders, DJ Slim, DJ Lotus Sound, and a lot more. So don't forget to check out the Boston Freedom Rally. Been going on now for 28 years. Such a great event held at the Boston Common. High Times and so many other groups and within the cannabis community will be there. And maybe check out their Facebook page and just type in Boston Freedom Rally and you can find out all about this year's 28th Boston Freedom Rally. I got the chance to go there a few years ago and meet so many great cannabis activists who chime in there to the Boston area. We've had a lot of laws changed in Massachusetts in the last few years. And so supporting events like the Boston Freedom Rally this weekend is a great way to continue this great cannabis movement that we're all involved in, pushing forward for better heights. All right, let's get to an album release. Just had Living Color. That's right, you guys might remember them from their classics in the 80s and the 90s, Cult of Personality, or Time's Up, Elvis is Dead. So many other great hits. Have just released a brand new album called Shade. This is their 6th studio album, released September 8th, 2017. The album features 13 tracks with tunes like Preachin' Blues, Come On, Program, Blackout, Who's That, and a lot more. The band is also consisting of Corey Glover, Vernon Reed, Doug Wimbish, and Will Calhoun. So get out there. You know, Living Color, one of those bridge bands that kind of came in force in the late 80s, early 90s, and brought a new style to the world of rock. And just kind of what they brought in the whole music world, considered somewhat of a political band with their hit Cult of Personality back in the day, and continuing to shine light on the music world with the great, great music of Living Color. So don't forget to check out brand new release, their 6th studio album, Shade by Living Color. All right, album birthdays, going back to now what is a classic. And on September 13th, 1984, Kiss released their 12th studio album, and that was Animalize. This album featured Heaven's on Fire, Thrills in the Night, Under the Gun. A lot of great tracks. This album also featured, this was the album with Mark St. John as lead guitarist, replacing Vinnie Vincent. Actually, Kiss had a few guitarists back in those days. But Mark St. John's ended up succumbing to a terrible disease called Writer's Syndrome. And so by 84, he was out of the band, and they brought in others. But this was the tour that marked Kiss coming out of their makeup as well. So, classic album by now. Kiss still going, doing great things. Recently inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And Kiss seems like will always be around, even without Paul. All right, I'm Herb Thrasher. This is your Reefer Rock Weekly Report for 9/15/2017. 8/15/2017. Keep supporting the marijuanaagenda.com. We'll be back next week.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. MJagenda.com.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. If you're a cannabis brand looking to build trust and awareness within the community, consider becoming a sponsor of this program. Your message will be seen and heard by the most dedicated followers of marijuana policy reform, who are loyal and supportive of those brands that give back to the community. Just log on to mjagenda.com and click the Become a Patron button to learn how your brand can also be featured in my live nationwide appearances. Thank you for your support.
The Marijuana Agenda, like the alcohol agenda. But a lot safer.
The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association and the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
Total war against public enemy number one.
10 federal criminal penalties for up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
Marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug.
Legalization is just another word for surrender.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show.
Encourage people to use less drugs.
I am here.
That was the point.
I think it would be a mistake to legalize.
Negative reports coming out of Colorado.
People don't smoke marijuana.
Well, ever since the election of Donald Trump as our 45th president of the United States, and with him the installation of uber prohibitionist Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III as the Attorney General, we've all been kind of on pins and needles here in the cannabis community. Are they going to bust us? Is there going to be a crackdown? Is something coming down the pipe? We don't know yet. So far, so good. So far we've remained untouched for the most part, but are we going to remain untouched as the scandals and the problems mount for the Trump administration? Will a crackdown on weed be forthcoming? I mean, we know Jeff Sessions really wants to bust some potheads. He really wants to, but will he? And I guess maybe even a better question is can he? Will the opportunity even arise? Let's not get too far ahead of this. I mean, we know Jeff Sessions hates pot. There hasn't been an attorney general who hates pot and potheads as much as Jeff Sessions since probably John Ashcroft. You remember John Ashcroft at the beginning of this century, George W. Bush's attorney general, the guy who was so offended by the naked boobs on the Statue of Justice that he had curtains installed? Yeah, some of you younger listeners might not remember that, but yeah, we had an attorney general who was such a puritanical prohibitionist, he had curtains covering up naked statue boobs. And of course, he was also the one who initiated, who was the initial subject of the lawsuit from Angel Rach, the medical marijuana patient in California who was suffering from a brain tumor. And that case made it all the way to the Supreme Court. The next year, it was called Rach v. Gonzalez, because Alberto Gonzalez had then become the attorney general. But it started during Ashcroft's reign. And basically, Ashcroft argued, and the Supreme Court agreed, Ashcroft and Gonzalez argued, and the Supreme Court agreed that even though a California woman was growing California marijuana with California seeds, using California shovels and California dirt and California sun and California water and California soil, and was not at all selling it interstate, and there was no commerce involved whatsoever, the federal government could still use the Commerce Clause to bust her. So that guy, you remember Ashcroft, right? So I think Sessions hates pot more than even Ashcroft did. I really do. But can he do anything about it? Because we've actually kind of gotten off pretty lucky, I think, in that the Trump administration is so mired in scandal and so politically inept that they don't have the capital to be able to go after pot and potheads. I mean, you got Sessions recusing himself over the Russian election cyber attack investigation. You got him going out in front of the cameras to announce that the children of undocumented immigrants, the so-called dreamers, may soon be deported to countries where they're foreigners. They've never been to these countries, and we're going to kick 800,000 of them out. And then you got Sessions deciding his Department of Justice actually filed a brief with a Supreme Court case. You know that Supreme Court case about the religious bakeries? You know, the religious people that run bakeries and they don't want to make cakes for gay weddings. Yeah, Sessions' Department of Justice just went on the side of the cake makers, the bigots. They just filed a brief saying it's a First Amendment right for religious people to withhold service from people who their religion tells them are no good. So if this case were to be decided in the baker's favor, just wait until we have some white supremacist Christian identity people who decide they don't want to serve black people or Jews because their religion says they're no good. Yeah, just wait for that. But all that stuff is swirling around Sessions, swirling around the Department of Justice, and it's bad. I mean, from a national standpoint, from a moral standpoint. But it's good if you want to narrowly look at the marijuana issue and say, look, they got so many problems going on out there. They can't even spend a moment looking at us. However, I'm seeing some signs. I am seeing some signs that a federal law enforcement behemoth may slowly be turning around that aircraft carrier of prohibition and gearing up for a crackdown. First sign, this comes from Jeff Sessions' backup, the Deputy Attorney General. His name's Rod Rosenstein, or maybe it's Rosenstein. I don't know. Let's say Rosenstein. Rod Rosenstein recently spoke at the Heritage Foundation. This is the very Christian conservative type think tank. And Tom Angel in Forbes did a great job of reporting on this. He was speaking about the Cole Memo. And you remember the Cole Memo is the 2013 policy from Attorney General Eric Holder's time at the Department of Justice. This is the memo that protects the state medical marijuana programs the state marijuana programs, medical or recreational, from any sort of federal interference, just as long as those states follow those 8 guidelines, like keep pot away from kids, cut down on interstate trafficking, and so forth. But when he was asked about the Cole Memo and whether or not, when he was talking about the Cole Memo and whether or not the Department of Justice would keep it, he was pretty coy about whether or not it would remain intact. His quote is this: "We are reviewing that policy. We haven't changed it, but we are reviewing it. We're looking at the states that have legalized or decriminalized marijuana, trying to evaluate what that impact is. And I think there's some pretty significant evidence that marijuana turns out to be more harmful than a lot of people anticipated. And it's more difficult to regulate than I think was contemplated ideally by some of those states." End quote. More harmful, says Rosenstein. More harmful. As if we don't have data from the feds, from the federal government. Just came out 2 days ago showing that fewer kids are smoking pot. We have data from the states that legalize showing that fewer teens are admitted to rehab for pot. We have studies in state after state, doctor after doctor, showing less opiate use, fewer opiate overdoses in the states with legal access to marijuana. Where's this more harmful marijuana he's talking about? Nevertheless, Rosenstein hints that this review they're undertaking may lead toward increased prosecutions by warning the audience that the Cole Memo changes nothing about federal marijuana prohibition. He said, quote, "Even if, under the terms of the memo, you're not likely to be prosecuted, it doesn't mean that what you're doing is legal or that it's approved by the federal government or that you are protected from prosecution in the future." End quote. So we've got the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, over here soothing the cultural conservative base at the Heritage Foundation. Meanwhile, Huffington Post reports that officials from numerous high-intensity drug trafficking areas, the HITA areas, and the National Marijuana Initiative, NMI, have been requesting detailed patient demographic information from state medical marijuana programs. HITA and NMI are both programs under the control of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, aka the Drug Czar's office. So the Drug Czar's office, through these different arms, is trying to get patient database information about medical marijuana. NMI has requested the age, gender, and qualifying condition data on patients, plus the count of total medical marijuana cards issued by California and Nevada, while HITA officials have requested the same stuff from my state, the state of Oregon. Now, the official at NMI who is making these requests of California and Nevada and some other states is a guy by the name of Dale Quigley. Quigley is a former Colorado drug cop and a virulent prohibitionist. This guy, this Quigley guy, believes that the voters in Colorado were duped. They were fooled. They were bamboozled. He says that seriously, folks, he says that if Colorado voters knew the facts about marijuana, they wouldn't have approved of medical marijuana in 2000, much less legalized marijuana in 2012. That's the mindset of this guy. Now, to their credit, the officials in the state medical marijuana programs have basically told Quigley, let me Google that for you, and directed him to their state websites, which already have the basic data he's been looking for. So think about why would the pot-hating HITAs and Dale Quigley at the NMI, why would they be so interested in, quote, doing comparative demographic research into states with medical provisions for marijuana and the use of a state-issued identification card, their words, end quote, unless they thought that that information would somehow help their prohibitionist cause? Well, folks, I can tell you exactly what they're asking this data for. Because state-level prohibitionists have been playing this same game for years now. Here's what they're going to do. They're going to find out that the vast majority of patients in the medical marijuana states are using cannabis to treat chronic pain. And then they'll dismiss that as pain, scare quotes, and then they'll allege that those patients are faking their pain or just lying about their pain so they can get high. And then they'll buttress that allegation with the age demographics and the gender demographics by noting how disproportionately young and male the pain patients are. So the whole idea is to paint medical marijuana pain patients as, just a bunch of skateboarding stoners looking to get high. Now, how do I know this? Well, because I've been listening to King Prohibitionist Kevin Sabet drone on about how, quote, the average Prop 215 cardholder was a 32-year-old white male with no life-threatening illness, end quote, for 5 years now. Now, I've never understood why Kevin throws in the white part. Like, what difference does it make that it's a white male? I understand why he's saying 32-year-old males and trying to paint the average as being low. Is he trying to make it like medical marijuana is a trick for white people? I don't know, but it's one of his favorite quotes. Dale Quigley, he has a similar quote. He says, quote, I didn't realize that in the Denver metro area, so many 18 to 25-year-old males had serious and critical medical conditions, end quote. Well, I always hate this line of attack from the prohibitionists, as if young men who do construction jobs, who are involved in high school athletics, college athletics, who maybe pursue outdoor recreational opportunities, they get injured and they suffer from chronic pain. It's the dumbest attack. Look, if you take the comments from these two guys, Rosenstein and Quigley, and you put them in the context of the Sessions Department of Justice, it looks to me like some sort of crackdown is coming, and they're planting the seeds of doubt to justify it. That's all the time we've got. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.